I'm Liz Thorpe, and I'm a cheese expert. And I'm back. I could just eat the entire thing. Okay, so maybe these are Brie. Certainly they look like Brie. What I can say definitively is that in the world of cheese, we would call these bloomy rinded cheeses. Brie is a bloomy rind, Camembert is a bloomy rind. Any cheese with this white, soft, edible skin or rind is a bloomy rind. When you make the rind on a Brie style, you introduce mold to the cheese. And that white mold traditionally is added to the milk during the cheese making process. Those mold spores that are present in the milk come into contact with oxygen and start to grow or bloom on the outside of the cheese. And it takes about 2 to 3 weeks turning, patting, flipping of the cheese to kind of take that bloomy mold and get it to form a cohesive skin. The other way of doing it is take a wheel of cheese and you spray mold on the outside, and you immediately get an Insta rind. It's generally thicker, it's chewier, it tends to have a taste that's a little bit bitter. If one of these cheeses were bright white with no brown at all, I would immediately guess that that one was made the faster, cheaper way. They're both white with some brown mottling, so I'm not entirely sure. Let's cut them open. Brie styles are very sticky, so I want a knife that's got holes or a really skinny blade. You don't want to rip a piece of the cheese off because it's sticking to your knife. So this first one is definitely firmer. It is nice and sticky though. The first one is got a little bit of a mushroomy smell that's really typical for a Brie style. Let's see what's going on over here. The second cheese is creamier, a little bit moister. It's harder to get out, it's sticky. Okay, well this one is definitely different. Classic, traditional French aroma profile, which is very intense mushroomy notes and like cooked cruciferous vegetables, cabbage or cauliflower or broccoli. It's got like a farty smell to it, frankly. That's really typical for traditional French Bries. That is starting to make me think we have something going on over here that is a little bit more unique. I want to taste them too. Brie styles run the flavor gamut. On the mild end, like butter, cream, milk, and then on the extreme end, more of those, cauliflower, broccoli notes. So this first one is milder, buttery. It's like mushroom butter. It's got flavor to it. It's not bland. The second one is like broccoli cheddar soup. So that is to me like classic French traditional flavor profile. This is really pretty hard actually. I'm gonna guess that this one is more expensive based almost entirely on its flavor and aroma. Let's find out. Okay, that's like satisfying when I'm right. This one is $8 more a pound, which is not insignificant. I will say that when you find a bloomy rind that has this very intense mushroom and broccoli aromas and flavors, definitely it will be a more traditional maker, generally a smaller cheese maker. Look for that thinner, browner, mottled rind versus that thick, white, chewy rind. The cheapest Bries are milder. They have a thicker rind. It's more about buttery, melty cheese than it is about the great nuance of complexity and flavor. I feel very, very confident that I'm looking at 2 cheddars. I'm also very confident that there's significant differences in the way that they are aged, which is gonna have a huge impact on their final price. Let me tell you what I see. On my right, I have a block of cheese. It's hard, so I know that it's aged. It doesn't have a lot of water in it. It's not soft and creamy. On my left, I have a big triangle that came from a bigger piece of cheese, and it too is hard and aged. Aged cheeses are going to be more expensive than younger cheeses. What I see in the cheese on my right is that it doesn't have any rind. To age it for a period of time, but to have no rind on it means that it was made and aged in a really specific way. The cheese is actually put into a plastic bag, essentially. The air is sucked out and then it is put into a cold environment and matured for 2 months or 5 months, or in the case of this one here, I'm guessing like 9 or 10 months. The cheese on the left has something that is really cool. It looks like a brown rind, but actually it's cloth. It's actually got 2 layers of cloth on it. This is a cheese that was made and it was wrapped in cloth and then it was aged. And that's really where the major price difference is going to come from, I think. Cheddars can be made in one of 2 ways. The traditional sort of American style cheddar that most of us grew up with was mild, medium, or sharp, and it came in a block. A cloth-bound cheddar is a cheese that's been made, wrapped in cloth, and then matured for generally 9 to 12 months. You take these big wheels of cheese and you put them in a temperature and humidity controlled aging environment. And over the course of weeks and months, those cheeses grow different molds on the outside of the cloth. They're turned, they're brushed, flipped, and all of that work is done manually. It is a very time-consuming and labor-intensive process. That's why I'm guessing cloth-bound is going to be our pricier cheese. Okay, let's cut into these. When I'm working with harder cheeses, I generally choose a knife that has a bigger, wider, stronger blade. So I like the hatchet because I can kind of just dig into it. So right off the bat, it's really dense and really hard to cut into. And it's got a really intensely perfumed smell. It's like toasted nuts. So this is a really delicious cheese. It's like toasted nuts and a bit like brown butter. I can tell it's been aged. Cheese B, it's kind of hard to dig a piece out, but also dense, also firm. The rind is this cloth layer. The cloth is permeable. The air can get through it. And over time, what happens is the smells of the cheese are very much developed by the aging environment. It smells kind of like wet wood. This was something that was aged on wood boards. It smells like being in a root cellar. I love how it smells. Earthier, more like potato skin or celery root. At the end of the day, it's just a ton more labor intensive to make a cloth-bound cheese. That's it. B is my guess. B is definitely more expensive. Let's see if I'm right. Hey. That was a gimme. I really want to stress that block cheddar is not bad cheddar. There are fantastic block cheddars. This is one of them. You should also know that you're probably going to love the complexity of a cloth-bound cheddar. At the end of the day, they cost more money because they are developed over many, many months in an open-air aging environment. Rindless cheeses. A rindless cheese compared to a rinded cheese is always going to be cheaper. It's not about which one's better. It's just about what does it really cost to make a piece of cheese. And in this case, it's more work, and so it's more dollars. What do we have here? They both have wax on the outside. Their rind is wax. It's a little bit springy, so it's firm in texture, but it's not rock hard either. And it's smooth and buttery yellow. I don't really see any air bubbles or any crystals. B, on the other hand, I would call this rock hard. It's very dry. You can see it's kind of flaky. And most importantly, for me, thinking about age, it's got these little white amino acid crystals. You don't see those in cheese before 9 or 10 months minimum. This is definitely older. That wax rind, that is characteristic of Gouda. Gouda or Gouda is traditionally a Dutch cheese, but now is made in the United States as well. And it's a really tricky cheese because there are young ones and there are aged ones, and they are radically different in flavor and in texture and in use. I think that's what we're looking at here. I'd like to cut them and taste them. Okay, so let's start with A. Yeah, see, this is an awesome knife for cheese B, but A is so creamy, it sort of sticks to the knife blade. A is really, really creamy, even though it's firm, and it smells like cultured butter, if you've ever smelled that. It's like rich, fatty, buttery, but a little bit tangy. And again, it's like eating a pat of cold butter. I would love to melt this over any kind of vegetable. Now I want to go on to taste B. I like this knife because I can actually kind of gouge the cheese. You get this beautiful little nugget, which is such a great illustration of what's going on here with age. There's almost no moisture left in this cheese. It's very dense, very hard. And it has this amazing smell. It smells like butterscotch. And the taste is like a savory version of a butterscotch candy. What's really interesting when you taste this cheese is that while it's really hard, when you chew it, it's got a creaminess and a roundness to the texture. Something else about that butterscotchy flavor profile, that's a very, very typical flavor profile for aged goudas that are made out of cow's milk. But you can actually make goudas out of sheep milk or goat milk as well. I believe that B is going to be more expensive because it is considerably more aged than A. So let's see if I'm right. Yes. See, it's more than twice as expensive. You're paying for time, you're paying for flavor, development, intensity, and complexity. Prepare to spend a little bit more, but be rewarded for your dollars. This is a good one. Here's what I see right off the bat. These are both mozzarellas. These are rindless cheeses. That's going to be true of any mozzarella. Mozzarella is not extremely aged. It's always a younger cheese. This is the fresher mozzarella because it's wet. It's squishy and it's got little droplets on the board and all over the cheese. Whereas this one is firmer, it's drier. This could be cow's milk or it could be buffalo milk. A lot of fresh mozzarellas are actually made from water buffalo milk, which is higher in fat, higher in protein, a lot harder to find, and a lot more expensive. First, I need to figure that out, and I can't do that until I taste. I'm gonna use this knife because it's got a thin, skinny blade, which is always a good thing when you're cutting a softer, wetter, creamier cheese. There's less surface area for the cheese to stick to, so I'll get a clean cut instead of ripping my whole piece of cheese apart. Just goes right through. This is a really great thing to see. Mozzarella is what's called a pasta filata cheese. It means pulled curd. It is actually pulled and stretched as part of the cheese making process. You can see right here, a mozzarella typically has the texture of like a poached chicken breast. It shreds a little bit. And you want that stretchy, elastic, but still creamy texture. Those would all be characteristic of fresh or higher moisture mozzarella. So what I'm wondering here is this cow milk or is this buffalo milk? Buffalo milk has a very distinctive grassy aroma and flavor. It's like getting a whiff of a newly mown lawn. And when you taste it, that grassiness carries through into the flavor. So this tastes like sweet, fresh milk. It's cow's milk and it's gonna be cheaper. Over here, looking at the inside, the texture of this one doesn't have that shreddy appearance, but that's not surprising because this one's got a lot less moisture in it. Doesn't really smell like very much, and well, kindly, I will say it's mild in flavor. It's salty. That's basically it. This is really made for cooking. It's made for melting. I have made my decision, but my reasoning may not be what you think it's gonna be. I believe that this mozzarella is less expensive, not because it's not fresh. I think that this is actually cheaper because most block mozzarella is made from partially skimmed milk. And you're actually buying a cheese that's made with more water and less solids. That's a lot cheaper to make. So my bet is this one's cheaper and this one is partially skimmed. Let's find out. Yeah, see, look, it's 2.5 times as expensive. To sum up, here's what you need to know. Mozzarella is going to be cheaper if it's made of partially skimmed milk and more expensive if it's made of whole milk. If it's made of buffalo milk, it's gonna be the most expensive. Just because fresh mozzarella comes packed in water or sold in a different part of the store, if both of them are made with whole milk, they're actually gonna be very comparably priced. What you really need to ask yourself is, do you want something that's creamier, milder, sweeter? That would be the fresh water-packed style. Or do you want something that's drier, saltier, and is gonna give you that super even, gooey, brown on top melt if you're making pizza or flatbread or whatever? It really has to do with the raw material that's going in. And in this case, skim milk versus whole milk is what's driving the price difference. Everyone always asks what my favorite cheese is, and while I don't have a single favorite, I have a favorite style, and it's here on the table in front of me. My favorite cheeses are what are called the washed-rind cheeses, and that's a technical term for a cheese that's been washed in salt water after it's made. When you wash the rind of a cheese, you help to cultivate a very specific kind of bacteria, which is called B. linens, makes the rind of the cheese orange, and it gives it kind of a sticky, tacky texture. It makes a cheese really stinky, and it makes a cheese taste really, really delicious. So cheese A is definitely a washed rind, and I can tell because of that moistness and because there's that variation in color. Cheese B, on the other hand, while it's orange, has this totally uniform color. So there's no variation to it, and it's also bright orange, like a safety cone. There's a big difference between those two orange rinds. I think to verify that, though, I want to cut into them and smell and taste. Once again, I'm cutting into creamier, softer cheeses, so I want to make sure that I'm using a small bladed knife so that I don't have a bunch of cheese that sticks to it. Actually, with A, I mean, it's like pudding. I mean, look at this. It's like, woo, stretchy. Let's see here. Yeah. Sometimes cheese smells really bad, and that's a good thing. With this style of cheese, you can expect really strong aromas. You should know that when you bring the bag home, but they're gonna smell kind of like diapers, kind of like socks. Believe it or not, that actually is edible. It's what makes the cheese taste amazing if you're someone who likes salty flavors and kind of meaty, bacony flavors. So, this, I could just eat the entire thing. That to me is like meat butter. It's just awesome. I don't know what B is, but I'm feeling like it's gonna be a lot milder. And it doesn't really smell like anything at all. I mean, it smells a little bit like milk. This is sort of like tangy butter. It reminds me of the flavor of Havarti or a young Gouda maybe, but it's got no real saltiness and it doesn't have any of the stinky, meaty flavor and aroma that I associate with washed rinds. This is a straight up case of just because a cheese is orange doesn't mean it's a washed rind. You've got to go for the aroma and ideally the flavor as well. Knowing all the work that goes into a washed rind, the repeated washing, and knowing that this is a small cheese, which means it's been a lot more work for a littler piece, I'm guessing that A is definitely going to be more expensive. And I'm going to go so far as to say that I think A is going to be a lot more expensive. Let's see. Wow. Okay, yeah, that's really expensive. What goes into all those dollars between 44 and 17? I mean, really, it's about cultivating a rind versus not. Cheese B, while it's orange on the outside, basically has just had a coloring added to it to make it pop in the cheese case. The washed rinds are extremely labor intensive. These cheeses are washed in salt water. They're turned and flipped, and that process happens multiple times a week for 6 to 8 weeks or more sometimes. And a small cheese has all that work put into it, but at the end of the day, it's maybe only 8 ounces or 10 ounces. So that really, really is a major contributor. There are many different washed rinds, and they aren't all $44 a pound. They're so good. So I really, really encourage you to check them out. The next time you're shopping for cheese, I hope you'll remember that more dollars means more time to age that cheese, more work to make that cheese, and probably more of a living wage for the person who made the milk. I also don't want you to get sticker shock. Cheese is priced by the pound, and that's enough for 14 to 16 people. You can cut that number in half and know that you're going to have plenty of cheese for whoever you need to feed at your next party.